In late 2019, normal high schooler Tokiwa Sogo becomes Kamen Rider Zio. In the future, he becomes the Demon King Omazio, bringing destruction upon the world. A resistance group fights against him, and when the world needs a hero, Geiz rises to the challenge and becomes the Kamen Rider that will defeat the Demon King and save the world. By traveling back in time to when Sogo was still in high school, he can stop him from ever becoming the Demon King and create a peaceful future. During his mission, he is approached by a Woz who wears white. White Woz hails from a future where Geiz defeated the Demon King and became the savior, and wants to support him in making this timeline a reality. Geiz, however, finds himself in conflict with himself. Having befriended Sogo, he sees the potential for him to not become a Demon King, but rather a great, kind one. Geiz realizes that he doesn't need to defeat Sogo and chooses to not become the savior. At the end of the series, Geiz gives his life for Sogo, who then chooses to become Omazio. Sogo ends the world so that he can create a new one without conflict. A new world where Sogo and Geiz never became riders, and have no memory of the old world. And for some fucking reason, we have to watch Geiz go through his entire character arc again, but without any of the dramatic tension.
Welcome everybody to the Toku Portal Podcast Roundtable 23 for the shit show that is Geiz Majesty. I am Vashi V, and joining me today is...
Rai. Welcome to Geiz Majesty. Oh.
God. The sad thing is I just happened to glance at YouTube and my camera switched, so when I just went like this on my camera to point to you, I'm pointing off the screen because you're actually over here on my screen. I'm so not used to everything being flipped.
It's the way Discord prioritizes viewership. So yeah, for flip for each other like this.
Physically we're still in the same spot, but both of our cameras are switched. So like if I move over here, if I move over here on my screen, we're both at far edges of our screens, but on the podcast we are, right next to each other.
Right.
Fucking YouTube is fucking weird. And yes, I'm trying to delay the shit show that is this fucking movie.
Oh. We walked into this thinking it would be bad because, Zio was just a bad series overall. It was worse than that.
This is if the writers of this movie never watched the show and went, this sounds like a great idea. And nobody went, we did that.
Like, we complained about the Cross Z movie where, okay, so we're retreading old ground with, Ryuga because, hey, we already went through this arc about whether or not he's worthy of being a hero. But with that one, they at least pulled, an unresolved plot point that no one cared about of, hey, this person is still mad about him because that time he fucked up. It wasn't necessary and it brought the movie down, but I would still give that more credit than the unnecessary shit that Geiz went through in this movie.
It's like, between that and the fucking time tracker plan, I'm getting sick. And I have now watched every Zio movie that has come out. And that is to include Reiwa. I did watch that. And spoiler warning for the Zio part of that, but at this point it's fucking obvious. The fact that everybody's plan is to steal Sogo's power, it didn't work with the other 5 people that tried to do this.
Well, everyone's plan is to steal someone's power and claim it for themselves, but, some people are just better at it. To create an entire world timeline where, alright, the Kamen Riders aren't real, they're just fiction, by removing Kuga and stealing his powers.
Right, that was the best version of it in terms of the plan, and even the best idea.
It's Riders can't stop me if I'm the only rider that exists.
Right, to the point of it creating a truly world-altering scale. It did it perfectly. As bad as parts of that movie was, that movie was much better than this. Much better than this. Even the idea for Finis in the Reiwa movie, which we'll cover as soon as it gets properly subbed for us, because we're a little picky. The plan that she has, well, yes, it requires her to take some of Sogo's power. The plan, it still works. Fuck you. I'm gonna restart this shit, and no, the writers are gonna be evil. That's just how this is gonna work. Because they were meant to be. Fits with the canon of the show. This is just literally, we watched this in the show, and it was done better in the show.
Not only that, but like there are actual continuity errors. Like White Waz's whole thing was, hey, we're gonna create the Savior timeline where Geiz defeats Omazio. And then at the end, when Geiz rejects that timeline because he has faith that Sogo won't become the Demon King, like, White Waz disappears because his timeline doesn't exist. Because, hey, Savior timeline is not happening. And as he's disappearing, he talks to the other Waz and he's admitting, like, hey, maybe it'll be fun. Maybe they can create a world where, like, everyone is happy.
Which, I get the idea of how White Waz came back into existence. I'm fine with that. Under the thing of, yeah, that's still a thing that's going to happen. The Omazio thing. It's still a... To use Deno, it's a singularity point. It's a fixed point. No change in it. Fine. I can live with that. It's just how it comes about will be different. And I'm fine with that.
White Waz's motivation in this entire movie is that he's mad that Geiz didn't choose to become the Savior. So he pushes him to become a rider again so that he can steal his powers for himself and become the Savior. It is literally Schwartz's exact plan done less effectively.
Right.
Somehow less effectively.
Well, this is what happens when you don't target the main rider who has the better power.
No, that power is evil, though.
Right, which, well, not at the time. Mainly because Sugo doesn't have it, I guess. But, like, I get the whole point of, yes, I gotta take the Savior powers, which means I gotta get Geiz to that point and then steal it. Fine, I'm okay with that.
And, like, Sogo is living with his uncle still in this timeline, which means, like, the incident, the bus crash where his parents died still happened.
Right. Which really confuses me about other particular aspects of this fucking movie. Which, I will admit, one of the issues is not even covered in the other movie. It's literally thrust at us upon nowhere. My fucking god.
And so, like, in the series, in the main series, Geiz chose to become a rider because the world was in peril, and when it needed a hero, he stood up to the challenge. Like, he was willing to do it. Like, people are in danger. Like, I can do something about it. I'm going to do something about it. And when it came to, like, White Waz pushing him to become the Savior, of, like, you're going to be the Savior, you're going to defeat Mazio, you're going to do it, you're going to be the hero, Geiz realized, like, that's not what he wanted. He realized, there's another way to do this, and I want to do that instead. I'm not going to become the Savior. So both decisions he already made. And this entire movie is about Geiz making those exact same decisions when both choices are pushed upon him. White Waz keeps pushing Geiz, like, hey, become a rider because the world's gonna need a hero later. But of course Geiz is pushing back because, like, the world doesn't seem to need a hero right now, and also I'm the only one being attacked.
Right. Like, and the way they went about the whole, like, pushing him to understand what it means to be a hero was one of the most underused. All three of them were underused, but the cameos for this movie. 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 The cameos for this are some of the most underutilized and kind of sad to see when the longer you think about it. Because so the reason why the way they get him to do it inadvertently is he has to pick a career for school, because most colleges or most high schools make you think about that for career day and stuff like that. Japan's apparently a little bit more stringent on it. So he gets pushed to go talk to like the chief of police or chief detective or whatever the hell his role is in this universe. And it happens to be Axel in his gorgeous red jacket, and I'm gonna tell you to shut up and then answer your question anyways. Like the cameos in here are nice to see, but they just come across as the same way they did the show, just kind of look who we got back, hooray, and not really much of substance. It was like the pushing catalyst just to drive the plot along. And I hate those type of cameos. I hate when the cameo is literally just there to move the plot along.
And like, so that's all this stuff about like Geiz having to choose to become a hero again, which, like, yeah, of course, if the world needed it, he would. And then there's the thing about, all right, choose to become the savior or not, and Geiz is being told like, yeah, to save the world from Sogo before he becomes the Demon King. Like, in this timeline, though, he already knows Sogo. He's already friends with Sogo. He already doesn't believe that Sogo could become the Demon King. There's no tension there like there was in the main series where Geiz had to accept that, like, this kid, whether, like, he was judging Sogo and, like, could this kid really become the Demon King in the future? And, like, here, there's none of that because he's already biased.
Like, and don't get me wrong, to start with in the show, he was biased too, the other way, because he knew the ending already.
And, like, but, like, the point is that it's a bad bias in this case because he's just gonna make the same decision as last time because he's already in that field.
Right, because, like, it worked, this whole plot line of defeating Omazio worked in the show because at the time he was still on the fence. He knew the future path that came to be, and they were trying to stop it. And then he started to learn and understand Sogo, and this had kind of met at the middle of that point. And before he flipped to, yeah, no, this kid's got it right this time.
And, like, it took them thinking Tsukuyomi died to find a common ground.
Yeah, that was a thing too. Like, this is a movie that had a bad idea, bad writing, bad story, and they did the best they could with it.
Did they?
I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, because I'm just going to assume none of the cast had anything to do with any of this. Except maybe Date, whose entire thing was probably, I just want to point out I'm a doctor and I want to make a joke.
Also, catchphrase the movie.
God, is it catchphrase the movie? But, like, and for me, the best two, because there are only 4, extra writers in this show, or in this movie, one of which we've already seen in the show itself proper. That 2 of them we did actually, because we saw fucking Kaiza in it too.
Right.
Because Kaiza and Deanne were both in the series proper, and then this one has Axel and Birth. Birth got shafted. I'm sorry, Birth got shafted. Does this literally show up, make the joke about, who are you? I'm your attending physician. Transform, whoop ass, end. And then never visit the character again.
Right.
Like, that's the shit that drives me nuts with these type of movies. Like, to be fair, most of the, like, the superhero Taisen movies did it too. And most of the major crossover movies did too. When they brought back, multiple suits, they usually only focused on, like, 4 or 5 characters. And I get that. But when they do that and they have these characters in the movie, they actually focus on the characters, not just give us a rehashing of the way the show worked,
And
which
like
was, hey, look who we got back. Okay, let's move on.
Kaizo was also shafted because Dian brings him in to protect Geiz from the monster, and then immediately takes him out once the fight is over. And like then like they have a conversation with Gay, like other characters, or like White Waz comes in and talks to Geiz about like his dream and whatnot. Like you were literally making a plot point about dreams. You literally have a character from Fies, and you don't have those two things collide.
Like it's it was just bad. Everything about this movie was a fucking garbage heap of decisions. Like, and I'm going to preface with this by I'm not going to say what I want to say, but there is one word that truly sums up this movie, and I apologize for that because it's the only word that does, and nobody can argue me otherwise. This was the most asinine decision of a movie that I've ever seen in the entirety of me ever watching Rider and Super Sentai, and I watched a fucking Ninja Drive movie.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
That I just started Drive, so that's something I'm gonna have to get to.
I will tell you now, when me and Pixie watched Drive, I accidentally skipped it, and nothing was missed.
Oh wow, okay.
About the only thing that movie serves for is it explains the Ninja's appearance in the Sango movie, which they don't even reference in the Sango movie. They show up and they're like, "Oh, cool, ninjas and big giant mech fight."
Great. So,
Yeah.
so the whole plot point about like Gaze is in his judo match, and then like his opponent fucking cheats and Gaze breaks his toes and is in a cast for most of the movie. Like, I didn't think about it while watching it, but in retrospect, that served no function other than to make Gaze an easier target by the monster being sent at him. But in retrospect, I think it would have been better if Gaze wasn't crippled and had a chance to use his judo to fight back or escape, and if he was, going down the road of refusing to become a rider because there's no reason to. There's literally no reason for him to become a rider. I'm on Gaze's side here. There was no reason for him to become a rider.
And I completely agree. And I even completely agree about the judo thing, because that's a whole storyline for the next movie we're going to cover. The other purpose, him having his toes broken, the only other purpose that served was to literally have a reason for Date to be there.
Oh my god,
it
you're
was
right.
the only way to explain, because if he didn't go to a hospital, there's no reason for Date to have shown up other than to be, oh hey, I was going to work at the hospital down the street and I saw this fight happen. At that point, this was the only way to make it seem as less of a contrivancy as possible, while still having it be a blatant contrivancy. Like, this is almost as bad as... Actually, no, this is about the worst contrivancy I've seen in all of Zio. Yeah.
Oof.
And that's saying something when literally...
That's saying something...
which is saying something when God literally shows up by... Well, this version, he's not God yet. Because fucking timeline, time frame, how that fucking works, I don't know. Where they're going to meet somebody, and they're looking for somebody, and the guy happens to drop an orange on his head. That's how they found Gaim. Gaim dropped an orange on his head.
And like, speaking of contrived, like White Waz's plan here is to have one of Omazio's minions attack Gaze to be like, oh, Omazio ordered me to defeat you so that you don't defeat him later. Like, but like, what, again, Gaze's whole motivation for becoming a rider in the main series was that the world was fucked. So, this whole agenda of pushing Gaze to become a rider to save himself,
is stupid.
like, you should have actually put Gaze in a morally like ambiguous scenario of like risking himself to save others in a situation where like it's not necessarily his responsibility to save anyone.
Or even just use a little bit of intelligence and I don't know, try to kill Tsukiyomi.
She might have been able to have a role in this movie then.
I mean, yeah, beyond doing exactly what she did in the movie and just running her fucking mouth.
Like, at one point after they get out of the hospital, Gaze is like, "Hey, what's your dream?" And Sukuma's like, "Hey, I want to become a doctor." And then that's as far as that goes. And then later, for the final fight, she and Sogo transform. But unlike Gaze, they don't get their memories of the past world back, so they don't fucking know what's going on.
Right. So they're about north of fucking useless. Like, the sad thing is, Tsukiyomi did more in the last two episodes of the show than she did in this movie. She served more of a purpose in that than she did in this movie, and her purpose in the show was to fucking die.
To pretend to betray her friends for Schwartz, to get close to him, to try to kill him, and only get killed in the process. Which is literally what fucking Aura did, and that failed.
This is like a testament of nobody's paying attention to shit. Like, I truly feel that a lot of the writers on this show just decided, you know what, fuck it. The bar, and to use other people's words, in terms of a end of era anniversary special, Decade set the bar pretty low, so we don't have to do much better. Plus, we've got the next Rider series starting, and it's fucking amazing. So yeah, we don't want to push it because we don't want to make that look bad. Because this show, the premise of it, could have been fucking amazing if they didn't do this shit of consistently rehashing the same fucking thing. And then that one moment when they finally, when Schwartz does his, or not Schwartz, sorry, Woz does his Schwartz thing and goes, you know what, I'm going to use another Decade power, but I'm going to be DN now because, you know, this movie is about secondary writers. God forbid they use primary one. And does the same thing. Can you, for the love of anything, explain what happened there at the end of that? How they solved the problem of White Woz?
No, like, Black Woz just fucking absorbed him.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he's like continuing to himself of like, you know what? How's about you just don't exist anymore? How's about there was only one?
I have a fundamental issue with that. And it's a very fundamental issue. When has Woz been anything other than human? With ninja powers?
Yeah, no, that's just it. Like Woz. Okay, so going off of Overquartz, Woz has some. No, that doesn't make any sense either. I was gonna say Woz has some time control powers, but he doesn't.
No, the only time he had even remote time control powers was White Woz with the book,
and like
where he could force events to happen.
And also, White Waz is not a timejacker. However, his role in this entire movie is basically a timejacker plotline. So I'm considering him an honorary member.
Yeah. But yeah, all of the time jackers are human. They just happen to have, or like human-ish at least, in the aspect of like the fact that I guess
Like
you can
they're
count Schwartz as non-human
Schwartz is a human. He just also has magic time powers that he can grant to other people.
because he's from a different Earth.
Right. He's from a
Still
world
human.
without riders.
They're all human, and Quarter was a group that was literally founded to be the heralds of Omazio. They were created to ensure that Omazio rose to power. That's what Quartz was, and that's what all the primary time trackers
And like
were.
I guess you could argue that maybe like that version of Sogo that's leading the Quartzer, like with his own time powers, was able to grant some of it to the Quartzers, including Waz. I don't know.
But
That
it doesn't.
movie doesn't make any sense.
Neither does this one. None of the movies for Zeo make sense except for Reiwa. And I'm sorry, that's a 01 movie. 100% that's a 01 movie. But none of these movies make sense, and there's no reason, no explanation for Waz Majin Buuing the other Waz. Because again, that's not how fucking time travel works. Because again, the White Waz came from a multiverse theory.
He came from a timeline that like the main series already established doesn't exist anymore. So how the fuck did this even happen?
So, and like I prefaced that earlier, they point out that him becoming Omazio again is still destined to happen. He's still going to become Omazio.
That's still on the table, yeah.
So it's just this was things had started back down that path for what, because he still wants to be king, because it's all based on his dream.
Oh my god!
Because that's what sparked it. So he still has the dream. So he's still going to become Omazio. That's still an inevitability. It's just which version.
And suddenly this puts the twist with Schwartz into perspective.
It's fucking stupidity. Everything about this is stupidity.
So
here's the other problem I have, because it does put something else into perspective, the fact that we now have these branching timelines. So the whole idea of that is multiverse theory. So Tsukiyomi and Gates coming back and fixing time, that one wasn't multiverse theory, because they're literally coming back down the same timeline. Whereas White Waz is coming from another timeline where this is a thing that happened, and they're leading to the Savior timeline. So that's another timeline. That's another universe. Then that means there are endless universes, and nobody's. Then where was the fucking threat to Schwartz's world? If the multiverse theory problem still exists, decade fucked up. Decade fucked up. Let's just face that. Number one.
Honoré DKO.
He did a bad job of merging the worlds. It's just everything about none of this makes sense. And having Kaito there for apparently no reason other than to go, oh yeah, you can have your power back. You can have your power now. Because apparently he stole the fucking watch at some point.
Also, DN gives Geiz like the Majesty power up in this movie, and how does that make any sense? Why does Geiz's like secondary rider cards translate into a power up for DN? Why? Like, okay, they use different rider systems. Why does one create a power up for the other?
See, they made a good explanation for decades. Because he literally made the watch out of one of the time tracker watches. He put half of his power in it and then gave it to Sogo. It ended up becoming a MacGuffin to get his powers back. It worked fine. The cards to that make no fucking sense. It's just fucking stupidity, and I guess only to point out that the end has all the secondary writer powers too. Because apparently he hasn't stopped traveling either. Still trying to get fucking Tsukasa to eat that goddamn sea cucumber.
It's never happening. This was their last chance.
I know, and I'm disappointed in that. All I want now is his actor to put out a video of him eating a sea cucumber and him to go, "Are you happy now?" And just let it be a running gag with the two actors. But I had there, to me, aside from Akira Date and fuck, what the hell is his name?
Kusaka Masato?
Is that
That's Kaiza.
No, Axel.
Oh, Terui something.
Yeah, Teryu. Like those two in this movie, by far the highlight of this movie. And the fact that, again, Bert's only purpose in the movie was to make a cheap joke to, for the fans who watch O's. And then do one thing and then Teryu at least imparting some wisdom to Gates.
And also just generally being a badass.
Yeah. So I want to touch on some of the, as you put it, the pound your head on a wall, why the fuck is this a thing?
Go on.
Now I'm going to cover two key points. Apparently, Aura is apparently madly in love with Gates. For no apparent fucking reason. It's just a thing that literally just gets thrown at you. And two, the bigger problem, why in the fuck is Schwartz in this goddamn timeline?
So, addressing Aura's crush on Geiz, I don't get it. At first, when is talking about, oh, I think Geiz has a crush on Tsukiyomi, and then she pours the water on his lap, I thought that was just her being a girl and being like, hey, have some fucking subtlety, don't just blurt those things out. But then later it's like, oh, she was eavesdropping on Geiz's conversation, and then rushes is like, policeman? My dad knows the police commissioner.
She really 100% comes off as that crazy stalker chick. Which, given the fact in the show that she did a fair bit of stalking, because, bad guys, it's what they do. But it just comes across as a giant, where the fuck did they even remotely set the groundwork for this?
And, that whole thing about Schwartz being in this timeline, I don't know. Sogo created a new world without conflict. Schwartz should have been the one person he didn't bring because Schwartz was the center of the conflict. So you could either argue that Sogo did bring him, expecting him to just not be evil, or Schwartz snuck into this timeline.
Right, but because this is the part of the issue that I have, is the only fair explanation is this is the latter of the two. Because it would be fair and easy to do, considering the fact that nobody in this timeline has a fucking memory. Well, except for the one person who's literally his entire job is I was told not to get involved anymore.
Oh my god. Geiz gets his full memories back at the end when he becomes a rider again. shouldn't he remember Schwartz and then be like, yo, our teacher's evil?
Yeah, you would think that. And also, just not really to give spoiler warning, but slight spoiler. Yeah, he lost. Nobody has their memories back now. Nobody. It's a key thing for the next movie. But Waz is literally the only person of this group who actually remembers everything.
But his
Because
role is.
it didn't affect his memory, and he did get rid of the book. Now he's writing the new one. But he was literally told, stay the fuck out of it.
Yeah, his role is to just observe now.
Because they call him out on that. Why didn't you help us earlier?
It's like you told me not to.
Right.
Pick one.
But given the final post-credit scene where, Schwartz has asked Aura and Hira to wait after so he could talk to them, and he gets that evil, disturbing fucking grin that is very much a Schwartz thing. He makes it seem more like this is, new timeline Schwartz, as in the new Omazio timeline of fuck you, I want to be king.
And why? Okay. Aura and have to not have their memories anymore, because if they did, they wouldn't be fucking teaming up with Schwartz again.
Right.
But also, why would
they kind of
go on?
That's a fair question too, because I inferred the end of that question, but the way the end of the show went, nobody remembered anything that happened. Literally,
Right.
New timeline. It never happened, so they have no memories of it.
Right. So, I'm just saying that, if this is the same Schwartz, he would not want to give them back their memories because they would remember how he was only using them.
Right.
But,
and they would immediately go, yeah, fuck you, dude.
But, the reason this exists, the reason this is a thing, the reason this is a problem is because Schwartz tricked them. They thought that they were trying to create a future without Omazio, a better future, when in reality Schwartz was just trying to steal Omazio's power for himself so he could be the Demon King or whatever. So Aura and thought that they were doing the right thing. They thought they were being the heroes. They thought that they were justified. They were not inherently evil. So why would they team up with him here?
Right, and that was the justification that we accepted for why they were in the new timeline.
Because Sogo found when they found out Schwartz was using them, they turned on him, and Sogo accepted that. Like, oh, you guys aren't actually bad at all. You were just misguided.
Right, and that to me that it doesn't make sense for them to do that with Schwartz, because we got the pity party story for Schwartz, and then immediately turned around and got I just want to be King Dick. And it's just bad. Everything about this is terrible. And the fact that apparently this is just the first movie of several. That's the part that bothers me more. The fact that apparently they're going to make more.
Like they did with X8 and Build.
X8 made sense. The ones for X8, the little extra things they did for that, it added to the story. Like all of that snipe shit and all of that, the snipe brave, it's them having their own little kind of thing.
It just kept going with the story. Like there was just more story to tell.
Right, and none of it was bad. Some of it was subpar for X8. Until we finally got to the end of it and got that whole thing tied together. Whereas even builds weren't, well, aside from the cross city movie, the Build movies weren't bad. And to be fair to the Cross Z movie, while yes, it was bad, uh, I want to argue the continuity of that, but I'm not going to.
What?
We got a comment from Springtime Bonnie that
Oh.
the Reiwa movie takes place before the Geiz Majesty movie.
Does that fit in with Geiz having his memories or not?
No. No, it does not. Well, I mean, neither one of them does, because in both movies, they both get their memories. Literally, the Reiwa movie ends with them all three of them having their memories.
So Geiz gets his memory back in both movies.
Yes.
Okay.
So continuity-wise, it's either
continuity is fucked.
Yeah, 100%. So like timeline-wise, it really doesn't matter where it takes place at. Just that both of these movies take place after the show. But it makes more sense to me. Well, I guess there is one key. The one key thing is, but again, by the end of the movie, it didn't fucking matter because apparently his rider suit is magic. Would be, he's not injured during Reiwa, but he is, because he's still doing judo and all that. Whereas in this movie, blah blah blah, doctor said he won't do judo again.
Blah blah blah, rider powers cure all wounds.
Because they fucking did. And this is the problem with movies like this. This movie was such garbage that I really don't care when it takes place. I would have much rather have never watched this movie.
Right, I'd rather have nothing.
Because in hindsight, if I knew what this movie was going to be like going in, which to be fair, we did have some rough estimate that it was going to be terrible. We were not expecting this level of shit show. We were expecting Build Cross Z level of shit show, which was still passable. Because at least that movie did things right. What it did right, it did right. It was a movie dedicated to a secondary writer, properly explained why the main writer's not involved, and progressed accordingly. Stupidly, but accordingly. This is literally just... Did you guys... It's been a few months since we've ran the storyline. We hope you forgot about it. Please pay Toei money. We're poor with the coronavirus. Which is a joke, considering this came out before all that started.
Right.
But like every decision in this movie was just a bad one. Every single one. There's not one good moment.
There's one good decision in this movie. When Teruri is ready to kick some ass, he pulls out a sword and starts dragging along the ground.
Right. Aside from him, his cameo, and the fact that his cameo led to true Axel Teryu, moment, and birth being birth, because it's just him with hair, which.
But
I'm so not used to any of these. The fact that half of these characters look nothing like they did in the show anymore. But to be fair, how many years went past for half of this stuff?
In all seriousness, though, there is an actual good decision in this movie. When Terry does go to Henshin into Excel and fight the monster that's been chasing Geiz around, a second one shows up, and together the two of them overpower Excel. And I say that's a good decision because otherwise Excel would have handled it himself, and there would have been no reason for Geiz to transform.
aside from that, everything else was how to put this?
Bad.
There's a specific smartass way I want to say this, and I'm trying to get the wording right. This is like my somebody sat down with a my first Kamen Rider movie outline and just went Geiz and just filled in the blanks. And it's about this is about the most simplistic, dumbest fucking movie. And I've watched Ninja. Let that be to the basis. I've watched Ninja, and I still think this is the dumbest Toku I've watched.
Like, this is a bad movie, and you should not watch it. If you haven't, you should just save yourself the time. It's an hour long, and it's not worth it. It's literally just Geiz choosing to become a writer again, and then choosing not to kill Sogo. Things we got in the show, but better.
Here, I'll do it this way. If you decided to skip all of Zio, and you just want a quick, hour-long refresher
of
to kind of catch up, watch that movie. Other than that, there's no purpose to this movie. And over the years, we have talked.
What is it?
So we got another comment from Jacob Jerez, and if I mispronounce that, I apologize. And this makes about the most sense for anything, and I'm sorry, this beats my baby's first Kamen Rider movie. This movie was just DN's fan fiction since he was writing in the Magic Tablet.
Now you play Where's the Lie? There isn't one.
God, I hate how accurate that fits. But, over the years since specifically me and you, since we're the only ones here, but since the both of us have been on the podcast covering Rider and Sentai, we've covered various shows, we've covered various series, both here and on Opencast, where we just cover this certain series as a whole. I don't think I have ever once, ever, truly gone, don't watch this. Until now. I cannot recommend this at all. Unless you really have that craving to watch Terryu drag a sword down and don't want to pop in your double DVDs.
Okay. So White Waz explains it. When Waz says, "I'm surprised you still exist," White Waz says, "Thanks to Schwartz, several parallel worlds were created, and in at least one of them I survived."
God damn it, Decade. That was literally... Decade's the only one who could do that, so it was literally Decade's power that did it. God damn it, Decade. Narutaki was right.
Which also explains Schwartz in this movie. He's probably just a Schwartz that survived in a different world and jumped over to survived but failed and jumped over to this one.
Good God damn it. I mean, at least that makes things add up a little better. I don't know how I missed that particular one.
Because that's near the end of the movie when we were just kind of giving up.
Probably. It makes sense. Because by that point I was kind of checked out until he fucking swallowed the other walls. But yeah, it's I don't think we have ever sat here and looked at our audience. I mean, to be fair, we haven't really looked at our audience until here recently, because the cameras are new. But I don't think we have ever sat here and not recommended somebody one of these shows or movies to our listeners. And I hate the fact that we finally found one to do so. Because, God, I cannot get over what a shit show this movie is.
Like,
I thought us bitching about Q Ranger
like,
and then Zio as a whole were going to be like the pinnacle of, oh my God, this is, I'm just going to bitch and for,
as bad as those
2
series
hours
were,
of a podcast.
we were able to admit that, like, hey, there's some appeal here that you should check out. Like, here are what we thought were the really cool moments. This movie doesn't have that.
Like, the major saving grace for Zio as a show was the idea that it had. You can watch the show and see the premise of what the show wanted to do and truly what it wanted to capture. Unfortunately, you're forced to, for a good portion of it, see it miss that mark. It wasn't until we got Decade showing up and getting Decade's input on what all of this stuff is going on and where all that plot lines were tying up, where the show truly, that's where the show truly shines. And to me, that's slightly a detriment to Zio itself, because there's a reason why we call this show Decade Season 2, because it's about the only point of it where it truly shines as a show. It's just ends up being, it becomes very middle ground of a writer show because of it. This didn't even hit the bottom of the page of what the show has aspired to be. Like, there's missing the mark, and then this one landed, like, say, for lack of lack of better words, this is somebody playing in a dart competition going, I want to hit a bullseye, and hitting the wall in another bar.
Like, you're not wrong, though, because, again, Geiz's motivation for becoming a writer in the main series was the world is in danger, people need a hero. And in this movie, White Waz tries persuading Geiz by telling him, like, hey, the world is going to be in danger in the future, they're going to need a savior, and that's you. But all Geiz can see is that he is the only one in danger. The monster is only attacking him. So you're preaching, but your actions speak different from your words.
Right. Like, it had aspirations, and again, could have ended up having an amazing premise if they didn't just rehash the same shit, but dumber. This is basically as if they tried to reboot, like, they were trying to reboot for lack of a better term, they tried to reboot Spider-Man, but decided to make Spider-Man 3 instead.
Make him what?
This is somebody decided, hey, let's reboot Spider-Man again to make it better, and ended up making Spider-Man 3 again.
Oh, Spider-Man 3 again. That movie had so many different drafts that were better.
And I'm sure this movie did too, because I have a hard time believing that this was what they had started with. For the life of me, I could think of 5 different ways to make this movie better without even having to fucking rely on let's rehash the Gate Savior storyline, but dumber. They could have redone Schwartz for all I would have given a damn. Would have made more fucking sense than this. You already put him in the movie.
To foreshadow that he's going to be the villain in the next movie, even. Fucking... Like, my words when we watched that post-credit scene was, no, I don't want to.
Right. As soon as as soon as I saw it, and because you had walked away at that point, because we were watching it together. You walked away, I specifically paused it, went back just to force you to see what what was coming.
Right, and I
So
said,
that me and
fuck.
you both could have the same reaction. Fuck it, we're not doing it. This could be the greatest movie in Toku history. I'm not watching it.
Like, yeah,
This this failure alone ruins it for me. Like, I didn't want to watch. The only reason why I watched the first generation movie was because it's got 01 in it. The Zeo part made me not want to watch it. But to be fair, much better of a movie.
yeah, I'm gonna watch the Reiwa movie, but whatever sequel this movie gets with Schwartz as the villain, I don't know if I'm gonna give it the time of day.
Like, and
Like, this movie alone has already killed like 2 hours of our lives.
right, because an hour of watching it and another hour of bitching about it, and the sad thing is we spent an hour bitching about it to each other, and now we're bitching to YouTube. On a plus side, I got some much needed frustration off my chest.
Yeah. I think that's all I had to say. How about you?
Like, I will point out, like, as rare as they are, I enjoy the podcast where we could just sit down and rip things because they're fun. Like, it's a different kind of fun. Like, us talking about like shows that are like 01, which is a fantastic show. It's a different kind of energy going into it. Like, we go into it going, this is a good show. You know, it's got a couple of nitpicks and it's more kind of a mellow podcast. Whereas these are usually just so much high energy. Fuck this shit. This is terrible. What the fuck? And I enjoy the fuck. I enjoy the hell out of them. And the fact that I get this much joy out of ripping this movie is kind of frightening to me. But this was the highlight of Zeo just because I had a lot of bitching for this show to get off my chest, and they gave me like one entire arc to do it in an hour-long movie.
Yeah, no, this whole movie was basically just a magazine
Right.
loaded in for you.
Ignoring the Gates power up, this is literally just like a recut trailer for the Gates Savior arc.
And in case any of you are wondering why we're not talking about the power up, it's because it's an ugly costume that serves no bearing in the movie.
No fucking use. Jesus.
And it's like, look up the costume if you haven't seen it. It is atrocious. It is literally just the ride watches glued to a really bad colored suit.
Freaking the bad Amazons. The freaking thing that was from one of the Amazon, either Amazon or Black, another writers that they did.
But yeah. So, thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. We intend
our next podcast won't be a bitch fest. So
right.
Please come back for a more polite podcast.
We intend to be next week with some new stuff. Show is still on hiatus, so the Sentai and Rider podcast might be replaced with other things. Just wait to see what we do. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.